lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan. Back with me again, my good friend Jen. We are going to be talking some Hellboy today. I'm very excited. I mentioned this to her before, but ever since I've known Jen, I think from the very beginning, I've always associated Hellboy with her. So I'm really excited to talk some Hellboy. I think the last time maybe the only time that there's been a Hellboy conversation on the channel has been with you, me, and Dylan, and we talked. I think it was Seed of Destruction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a long time coming. Hellboy is one of my favorites. Mignola he's on my Mount Rushmore of favorite creators. I mean, when people ask me, his name is the first name that comes to mind, and then it's hard for me to kind of fill out the rest because there's so many creators I love, but Mignola, hands down, if he has a book out, I have to read it. His art is just some of my favorite. But the one we're talking about today, he didn't draw. He wrote Wild Hunt, and
yes.
I forgot. Well, obviously, I love all the books, but I forgot how much I really enjoyed the story until I sat down and read it in one day. And read the entire thing. Duncan Fegredo, he's like my second favorite Hellboy artist. I think he draws Hellboy in a way that's not copying Mignola, but also feels like Mignola, if that makes sense. I don't know.
It takes the essence without copying, but you really feel and see the essence of Hellboy in his heart. And I agree that it's probably one of my favorite artists to draw Hellboy.
Yeah.
It's just very good.
To me, if you can't draw the bottom part of his jaw, that's always how I judge a Hellboy artist. The way they draw the bottom part of his jaw. The rest of it, it's fine. The right hand of doom also, I guess, is pretty important, and the way that that's drawn. But you're looking at his face mostly, and he gets the bottom jaw damn near perfect compared to other artists. It's their own rendition, and that's fine. I don't know, for Hellboy, I think there needs to be a certain aesthetic in terms of the art, in terms of the shadows, because Hellboy's known for that. That's what Mignola does. So if you don't kind of incorporate that, it's too to me it's too jarring as a reader, and it kind of takes me out of the story when it's not. And look, there's some really great artists that have drawn Hellboy, and their other stuff I like better, but I'm I don't know if I'm not going to mention who, but I don't know if I prefer you drawing Hellboy. Maybe you go draw something else,
Yeah, I think I just feel like sometimes just too much. They just try too much, and it just remove the focus from the story, because Hellboy is also about the story. There's so much lore and so much historical facts, and just there's so much information within the story that if your art takes so much space that you forget what you're reading, it doesn't quite fit with Mignola, it's just Hellboy is also mostly about the lore and about all the creatures and the universe that it takes in, and you just have to render this perfectly to really give justice to the story. For me personally, that's why I love Hellboy.
That's why I realized it again after I was reading this, and after I was telling Jen too before that I just recently picked the first 4 omnibus of BPRD, and that's super it has the lore, but it is it's not as prevalent as Hellboy, so it's there, but it's not at the forefront. But going through this, I'm I've always thought okay, I've obviously at one point in my life I would like to at least write one comic book. That's a goal. I don't know that I want to write them for years. I don't know if I have the fucking energy nor the patience. But reading this, I'm man, this would be something that would be fun to do. Taking lore, right? And then creating a character that could almost live in Hellboy's world, but not be attached to it. I'm that would be fun to do. To kind of take what I love about Hellboy, create my own kind of character within that realm to where it could cross over with Hellboy if I wanted to, but it's not connected, And I think that I don't know if you've seen the documentary, the Hellboy documentary, the Mike Mignola documentary that came out.
No, I haven't seen it.
So good. If you didn't love Mignola before, I think that could turn people into fans of him, because he's
Okay.
not somebody that does a lot of interviews, and to hear him kind of talk about it, to hear like the story behind his career and like why he did Hellboy, and then to just stare at his library. Oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah.
the amount of books that this man, no comics, like it's just books upon books of like, old like Russian folk tales and fucking Norse, all this different stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's so cool to see that, because like you read his comics and like this dude obviously loves history. He obviously loves these types of stories, but to
But also
see
he
it,
has, yeah, but also he has so much knowledge. Like,
yeah,
I don't think people grasp how much knowledge Mignola has to write these stories. Like, he takes like super underground, like thousands of years old, like histories and stories, and then he just like brings them back to life again, and then just create a story with it. Like, you need to be aware of like how much knowledge he has and how much like historical facts he knows and all that stuff, and it's crazy. It's just very impressive.
yeah. This particular story too, like I love the
So
the
good.
cold open, like
Yeah.
you start off and like you're in Italy, you see this dude going on a bicycle ride, and then fucking all of a sudden there's a note that comes, and it's addressed to Hellboy. And it's like this fucking guy gives him this note. They're like, how do they find me? And he's just like, just wait, he's in the woods. And it's like you don't need to, and that's the great thing about it, is all these stories, they're not always linear. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
for a while they were kind of told in the same realm, but like even now, like the stuff that comes out, he went all the way back to the 50s. He started in 1947, Hellboy the BPRD. So like he can go
Yeah.
back and forth, and that's the awesome thing about Hellboy, is that it doesn't need to be told year by year by year. He's in the woods, and then he's like laying on a fucking couch, and these witches are just standing over him, and like, and this, I forgot like what it's hard for me to remember because I've read so much, but I forgot like where he had left off in the prior story. I think Darkness Falls was the one before this, right?
I think so. Yeah, but I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read it, to be
Okay.
honest. I don't remember exactly what happens in it. I just remember that.
Like he
No, I
fights a
don't
creature from
remember.
his blood. I mean, we find that out in here, right? So I
Yes,
think
yes,
that
yes,
was the story that took
yes.
place before. But like, he's completely out of BPRD at this point. He's not associated with them. He's on his own. I just think it, like there's this thing called the wild hunt, right?
Yes.
And this is one of the things I love the most, is that there's times when he's talking to people, and at moments you don't know whether they're alive or they're ghosts or they're fucking whoever the fuck they are, because they don't always delineate that. Like that's something like that Hellboy can be talking to somebody. I mean, there's a point where he's talking to Morgan Le Fay, and
Yes.
she looks like she's young, and then you go a couple pages and she's a fucking skeleton looking like like just complete husk of herself.
That's one of the beauty of Hellboy, is that you always like, it's kind of if you're seeing the story through a fog, and like sometimes like a cloud is gonna come and then the character is gonna be full flesh and color, and then another cloud is gonna come and that same character is gonna become like a skeleton. It's like you're in the middle of a fog, and depending of like how you see it, your perception changes, and it's just beautiful, and just it adds so much magic to the story. It's just, I love it.
Yeah, and I love how he just like, he's never phased by anything. He just like takes everything as
Yeah.
it is. He was just fucking walking around
Unbuttered.
with, yeah, with his cigar, always with the cigar in his mouth, and as he like kind of goes through this like hallway, and like I love like the way you see these like creatures' heads on the
Yeah,
wall that
the
have been in the
giants.
hunt. Yeah, and this like society goes back and back. Like I think it goes back to the 1259. So this is like something that's been going on forever. And I love how he's like, what about this dude with the deer head on him? He's like, oh, that's the hunt master. He represents her, the god of the hunt. So like no folklore is untouchable in Hellboy's universe. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter whether it's African folklore, Russian, any country, like it all counts, it all matters within
yeah.
this universe. I love that.
It's, yeah, it's beautiful. It's just, it really depicts it depicts the world through the folklore, and it's just depicts the diversity and the different line of thoughts and all that stuff from the world within the same story, or the same like character that goes through different stories. And it's just a really like masterful universe. Mignola really creates something beautiful with this character. It's incredible.
And then I think you pronounce his name Grugok, right? Is that what
I
you or
have no
Grugach?
idea.
Okay, what do you
I
what
said
do
it somewhere in my head, but I don't know how to pronounce it in real life.
All right. Well, for the sake of this conversation, I'll call him Grugach. That's what I'm going to call him. I love his side story that's taking place as we have the Hellboy story, because he's been wronged, and like we get to find out like why he hates Hellboy, and
Yeah.
what his mission is, and like getting to depict this like a warthog type creature, like you feel sorry for him at moments, even though he's a fucking demon and he's a piece of shit, but like you get to find out why he's doing what he's doing. He's pushing this fucking crate around, and what is he trying to do? He's trying to resurrect a witch that's going to become the queen of witches.
Yes. And also the story of this witch is super, like, it's very an interesting way to tie it in with I can't really spoil stuff. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I can say
Go.
everything.
These things have
Okay,
been out for years. Yeah, go ahead.
perfect. So like the fact that Nimue, her other name is Vivian, and we all know that Vivian is the one that took down Merlin in the King Arthur folklore, and that the fact that this story takes place in the King Arthur folklore is just such a beautiful like way to tie all the characters in and to add this villain, which is Nimue, within the story of Hellboy discovering his history with King Arthur. And it's just for me, I was very impressed with like when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is so smart and this is so good. I want more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm telling you, it's I really wonder, because maybe he said it in interviews before, but like how far out does he plan? Like when did he know that he was going to do this with Hellboy? Like
In
that's
the
what
version that I have, so this is the version that was published after the movie came out, like the movie with the guy from Stranger Things, that the recent one. He added a note in the beginning that said that he always considered doing an adaptation of the King Arthur. But he like at his beginning before Hellboy, he wanted to do a King Arthur adaptation, but he like he wasn't sure about that and all that stuff. And then at some point he came up with the idea of relating Hellboy to Arthur. And then that's just like he was like, this is just a crazy idea I had, and I had like no idea how to like how it would come out, but he still did it, and it became like such a big like part of the lore of Hellboy and all that stuff. So that's very like this is one of his first idea, and it's just the idea grew with the character and with his experience as a comic writer through the years to become the Wild Hunt that we know. Like it's very good.
Oh man, yeah, I haven't read that because I have a different version.
Yeah.
Man, I'm happy and I'm sad. I'm happy that we got Hellboy. I wouldn't want that to have changed, but man, I would like to see his King Arthur, some like epic story done by him. Man, that would be dope. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to mention though that what I also love about Hellboy, and it's always, I find that it's in every single story. He'll come across somebody that he met decades before, or ancestors of somebody, like when he's on the horse and they're going for the hunt, and he meets the grandson of one of the people whose houses he burned, and he's like, so you're pissed you didn't get to inherit a slug house because he burned it down because it's a giant slug creature. And I just it's stuff like that like it rewards people who read all the books, right?
Yes.
But it also adds so many different layers to like you understand, like he's been around for a long time, and there's a point where he stops. I don't want to say he stops aging, but he doesn't look like he gets older. Yeah. I'm sure he is getting older, but it's like he doesn't look like like we see him as a kid, right? And when he gets brought here in World War II, and then there's a lot of young Hellboy stories, but you don't really see the difference of when he's little to when he looks like he does now, which is an adult. Like there's no real like there's no teenage Hellboy. You know, like it's just, it almost looks like he goes from like young to what he looks like then, and then he's just full grown and he's fucking, you know, with his jacket and his guns and his freaking cigars.
Which is very interesting because like we all know he's a demon, he comes from hell, like blah blah blah. So like it just reinforced that the fact that he's there on earth for like thousand of years, I don't know how many years, but like he doesn't age and everything, it just reinforced the fact that he was there like almost at the beginning and he's gonna be there at the end, you know, like it just like put more emphasis on the fact that he's not getting older, he's always there, he always survives, he's never like even if he dies, he becomes back, he comes back to life, so he's gonna be there at the end. So you just, for me it's like I always want to know how it's gonna end because it never ends, you know.
Yeah, he comes back for the, I mean, look, I mean, this is going far, but like he dies and he goes to hell. And
Yeah,
there's a whole 10-issue series of Hellboy in hell. And then
yeah,
I didn't even realize that they did it, but they bring him back in what is it, BPRD Hell on Earth, right? Like he
yeah,
comes back eventually. And but you always have this looming thing, and this is like he's literally a character that fights against nature and is fighting against, you know, his own, I don't want to say prophecy, but like
his own nature.
like he's fighting against his own nature. So he's meant to like take over and destroy our world, you know, like,
Yeah,
and that's why, like, I mean, if you don't know this by now, like, and like why his horns are shaved down, because like when he goes full demon, his fucking horns come back and he snaps them off, he shaves them and stuff like that. And that's why he has the right hand of doom. That's what's going to give him control over the armies of hell. And
it's the key to
yeah,
hell basically. And in the Wild Hunt, in this volume, I find it very interesting. I know I'm moving forward, but we can go like I'm
sure. No,
always
it's
doing
fine.
back and forth.
I do it
But
too.
someone, I don't remember who it was, but someone says oh, it's Morgan Le Fay. She says you were born to have a crown or something like that, but like you can have two crowns, like because you can have the crown of the earth, the crown of England, or you can have the crown of hell. Basically, he was born to wear two crowns, and it's two crowns from different worlds, and he can like bring them together, basically, which is another example of how like, how can I say this, but like complicated the universe is, how like
Complex, yeah.
how much, yeah, how many details there is in that story.
Yeah, I mean, look, you just said it, right? Like he gets, first of all, he gets betrayed by this wild hunt who he goes on there, he gets stabbed, and then he wakes up and he's like, I guess to me, the way I perceive it is he's in this state of in between where he's not
Yes.
dead and he's not alive. And he goes and you see that he comes upon King Arthur's body, right? Like this
Yeah.
skeleton. He learns that while his father was of hell, you know, his mother
Yes.
was a descendant of King Arthur. So
Yes.
he is the last living relative of King
Of
Arthur,
King
which
Arthur.
means he is the King of England.
Yeah.
And getting the fucking Excalibur sword, like I remember when I first, like, I forgot that it happened in this story because again, like there's so many Hellboy stories. I've read
Yeah.
so many, it's been so long. Once I like remembered that this was, I was like, oh, that is, I remember like loving this when I
Yeah.
first read it because you wouldn't expect that. Like that comes out of like nowhere to me. The fact that
Yeah.
he's, I mean, they
I
make
mean,
comments. I think that one of the characters makes comments like he calls him the King of England, doesn't he?
yeah, one of the character of the Wild Hunt at the beginning,
Yeah,
he says something about like you're not gonna take I'm not gonna let you take the throne or something like that. Like
right.
he allude to the fact that he's meant to be the King of England, but you don't really understand at that point. But what's really interesting about that book is, from memory, I believe this is one of the first time that we actually know his mother is. Like we always
Yeah.
know that who his dad is, but this is the first time that we actually have information about his mother. And this is like, when I read that book, I was like really happy because that's one of the questions I always had. It was like, okay, I get it, he's a demon, he's from hell, but like, who's his mom? Like, is there a backstory there? And this is where you learn the backstory of his entire like family, like the other side of the family, and it's just as genius as the fact that he's from hell.
Yeah, because I don't think like I think you would just kind of assume that
Yeah,
he was just completely from hell. You wouldn't, I mean, it's not that it hasn't been done. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, I think there's other characters too in comic books where it's a demon and he takes like, I mean, DC Comics, you have Raven, who her dad was a demon and he manipulated this woman and,
yeah,
and I wouldn't say she's a witch, but and then that's where Raven comes from. But Hellboy, like, yeah, you would think like just by looking at him, there's no way that there's any kind
because
of,
if this is Hellboy, right? There's so
yeah,
much folklore. Like you
yeah.
would assume that they would have actually a story there. Is it like, because in this book he talks about the Sabbath, and I was like, this is so smart. This is so freaking smart of how like actually the demon, like the entire story of the mother riding on the back of a demon in the shape of a goat for the Sabbath is such like a classic tale,
Mhm.
and then it just becomes so much more powerful in this story because this is actually how he was created.
Yeah, and then when we're talking about Grugach, right? Like you
Yeah,
have his story and why he hates Hellboy and like they were trying to kidnap this little baby who ends up being Alice, like who's
yeah,
from the past too, and like he's meeting up with her and like so she's like, I haven't seen you in what I think she says 40 years or
yeah,
something, right? Like so everything is just kind of looped back in and stuff. So like and that's what I love is how he can take stuff that maybe wasn't as big of a deal in side stories or whatever and
yeah,
then make it of more importance later on. So while he may release a one-shot issue that at the time maybe you're like, oh, this is a good story, but you're like, you don't think it's very consequential, it can end up becoming a fucking major part of a story arc, which I
yeah.
absolutely love too. And I love the interactions between Hellboy and Alice.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. It's
Yeah.
very it brings out the sensitive side of Hellboy, like the human side of Hellboy. And this is like again like another way of how Mignola writes like really well is the fact that he takes a literal demon and makes it almost human by the way that the way he feels emotion, the way that he thinks, the way that he interacts with like his close ones, you know?
No, and you can see that she almost has, I can't remember. I think there's like a name for it, but I can't think of it right now. But the way she almost has like this kind of like love for Hellboy, like this, it almost seems like she has like a little bit of an infatuation with him. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's true because it's kind of his savior, you know, like he
Yeah.
saved her when she was little, and then he stayed kind of in his life because you can see there's a a scene where like you can see pictures of Hellboy holding her when she was a baby, and like on the with other pictures of the family. I
Mhm.
don't remember what it was, but like you can see in the background that he was still present in her life through the years. Yeah, exactly. You can
No.
see it. Yeah. Again, it's all in the details, right?
Yeah, dude. This is just such a great story. I love it, and then he's talking about how he swore he kind of like always protect her, right? Like he felt
Yes.
like this like need to protect her, and they go up to this other
Oh,
this other
the
she's a witch, right? Or is she just a
we don't know what she is because they call her queen, but then she says
that
like I'm not really it's been a long time since I was a queen, blah blah
yeah
blah. It's Queen Mab,
yeah
Mab MAB.
yeah
I don't
yeah
know.
Queen Mab, that's right. And it's so she's also kind of telling the story of like uh what you were meant to be, and I love how like something was his blood created this villain, or not villain, created this creature that
Yeah.
he fights in darkness calls, and doesn't and flowers grow from his blood too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, this is another part of the folklore that
Yeah.
when flowers grow out of blood on a war field.
I love this too. He's like, I've been all through this with Hecate and Rasputin and the talking fish. And she's like, I'm not here to tell you what will happen. I'm gonna just tell you that I see only one hope. And I just love that about him because like he's so hesitant because everybody tells him what he's supposed to be,
Yeah,
what he's
exactly.
supposed to do, and he doesn't, he kind of always wants to go against that. And even as he could take the sword of Excalibur, he hesitates with that too. Like he doesn't want to do it, but like
He doesn't take it at first because he's like, I don't want it, I don't need it, and I don't want what it means,
yeah,
and I don't want an army, because basically if he takes the sword, he wakes up an army, the army of King Arthur, and he doesn't want an army. He's a solo guy. He just want to get through life and do his thing and just like be unbothered by his whole destiny and everything. But at the end, he has no choice but to take the sword because there's a war coming, no matter what, you know.
yeah, it's inevitable. I love these pages with Grugach and
Yes.
Queen, because like you just see this, because now you've seen like what he was. He was a shapeshifter, he was in
Yeah.
love, and then he lost that because he showed her his true form and all that stuff. And now he's just like trapped in this tiny body, and he hates Hellboy, and he's just like feeding into that hate. And but he just looks so I won't say pathetic, but he just looks so
Miserable.
miserable is the word I was looking for. Looks so miserable, and he's like giving all his faith into this queen, and she's just ruthless. I love the fact that you don't see her eyes, you just see
Yeah.
the red slits. It just adds to an element of like fear, like when
Yeah.
you see her, like you can't fully tell what she's gonna do, and there's so much told, not with the eyes, which is what you usually look for with like emotion or what's going to happen, but you see it in the mouth. And
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to kind of note about her character.
Also, I love the fact that she's like, you can see that she's beautiful, because all the witches are old and ugly and horrible, but her, you can see that she's has like young skin, and she's meant to be beautiful and everything. And it just contrasts with how witches are usually portrayed in Hellboy. They're usually just like old, like brittle woman,
Mm.
and like Baba, I'm thinking of Baba Yaga
Baba
and all that
Yaga,
stuff,
yeah.
that like very ugly witches. But her, you see that she's meant to be beautiful, and for me it just had so much contrast. And the fact that she wears red and all those dark pages, and Hellboy is also red, you can also like feel a kind of like their destiny is linked in some way. Like I don't know, like there's so much to interpret in that book.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't like kind of connect those dots, but yeah, like they both are a very striking red. Like it definitely, you look at so many of the blacks and the grays,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, the muted tones, and those two completely stand apart from every
Yeah.
other character in the story. I love issue 5 too, because I always love these like knockdown fights with like Hellboy just fighting fucking,
Yeah.
going up to the castle and stuff. But yeah, but then you see Morgan Le Fay, and she's like also kind of witching. Like that's when you see her, she's all young and stuff, and then you hear her story. I love her telling Hellboy about his past,
Yeah.
because she's also like, if you've read King Arthur, like she's like a very like, you can't really necessarily say she's bad because she's kind of been screwed over too, but you also hear about how she's like the half sister of King Arthur, and they had a kid, and that's kind of stuff is so prevalent
Yeah.
in some of those old stories. And that's why I think that when you see people like with Game of Thrones and stuff, like
Yeah.
if you realize like, well, that is a lot, or that happens a lot in these old stories. Like it's not like, I
Well,
think
that
it's
it
weird.
happened in real
Yeah.
life. It's
Yeah,
based on real life.
I think it's weird, but it is a part of those stories. But I love, getting to see, and again, like we are seeing this through the lens of Hellboy. So like he's perceiving her as like this, what she was when she was young.
Yeah.
And then later on you'll see like really what she
The
is.
skeleton. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like talking about like the ancestors and how they thought the bloodline was ended, but it wasn't. And there was one female in the lineage that would, and it was a woman, and then
Yeah.
finally he was the first male
Because
heir.
it's a lineage of witches. So they
Yeah,
were all witches, and witches are all women. So it's like
yeah,
a witch's daughter all the time. And then at some point, one witches had a son, and that's how it broke the witch's lineage. But a descendant was born. So he was born from a lineage of witches, but also from a King Arthur descendant.
and look at these pages, these are so good.
I know, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book.
And yeah, and this witch is calling herself a goddess of war. I forgot about that. She's not even referring to herself as like a queen, because she's what does she do? She says, melt this crown, make it a knife so that I can kill, and then I want you to make me a helmet
And
from
the
the
helmet has to have it's a helmet with 2 or 3 crows or something like that,
Mhm.
which is also a symbol of something, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But all the details are very important in that story.
Mhm. And then these pages too, like you see
Yeah.
Hellboy and how with this, you know, and what does she say too? Like you were always meant to carry a sword too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that too. And I always love the scenes where he snaps his fucking horns. Like that's I don't know what I love about it so much, but I do. And then here, yeah, this is where we see he's like hesitant. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly. He's hesitant, but then
Yeah.
like he's thinking. You can see he's thinking. But also, I just remind when you said like you were always meant to carry a sword. I believe, let me just check, but I believe that when he kills all the giants in the beginning, I believe he does it with a sword too.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
yeah, you're right.
I think he does it with a sword, and he was like, and then when he was talking to Alice, he like remembers how it was like a force that was bigger than him that took over him when he killed all those giants. Like he almost had like pleasures doing it, and it just this is at the beginning of the story, so it ties in with the end when she says like you were always meant to carry a sword. It just like and like put emphasis on the fact that he has this beast inside of him that's meant to like kill. He's a symbol of war basically.
Yeah, I love, and then Hellboy's dad comes into the mix too. Like,
Yeah.
oh, so good. I could I mean, look, I love Mignola's art, but Fegredo does a fucking hell of a job too, man.
Yeah, it's very
So good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Also, the color work. Like,
By Dave
Hellboy
Stewart.
has such an interesting color palette, and it's so powerful. Like, you can recognize a Hellboy story just by the colors.
Yeah, Dave Stewart, like I don't think anybody else other than him should color Hellboy at this
Yeah,
point. You know,
no.
he's the best colorist. He has the because it's really about setting a mood too, you know, and he sets
Yeah,
that mood so perfectly because it needs to be a certain way or else it doesn't feel like it belongs.
exactly. And it's such a perfect balance of like blue, gray tones, and then you have the powerful like red, yellow, orange tones for fire and hell and everything. It's just a great balance and a great all the details have a specific color to enhance like I said, like Nimue wearing red and Hellboy being red and everything else is gray and blue. Like it just there's so much impact within the colors that it's just like it's just a really good job of coloring with the art style.
Look, I mean, yeah, look, we get like I think almost 2 issues. Or maybe it's like, yeah, I think it's about 2 issues where we first see the sword and before he actually decides, all right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna fucking take it, you know? And I love it. It's such a great 2 pages right here.
yeah, yeah, it's very nice. I love how he did the sword too, like Excalibur. I love how he like the emphasis is still on Hellboy because sometimes with King Arthur's story the emphasis on Excalibur because it's a magic sword and blah blah blah. Like it's usually like it shines or like it has like a magic element to it. But in this book, the emphasis is really just on the character, not on the accessory, and I find that very interesting.
I know it's like this, like, doesn't look gold necessarily, but it's like
It
this like
looks like
light
stone.
brown. Yeah, it's this light brown color.
Yeah,
So it doesn't even look like as regal as you would think Excalibur would look.
exactly.
Like it's one of the most famous, I would say, weapons in all of like, history.
Yeah,
Like that sword, like people know what
yeah,
Excalibur is when you say it. I mean, it's yeah, to see it like that to where it just kind of looks like it's just
yeah,
another sword. It doesn't really look that special. And then like he says goodbye to Alice at the end of it, and then we see, the I mean, she's a queen of blood, right? Is what she's referred to as, or is that in the
yeah.
movie?
I don't remember if it's the movie or the book. She's like
Yeah, I don't think she's referred to as that. So like we're seeing all things come to a head. We see that society too, like where like they start killing like
yeah,
one of them starts killing each other. It's like we cannot let this dude be the king of England. We
because it's a monster.
refused.
Like we
Yeah.
cannot let a monster be king of England.
Yeah. So they go back down to the original 7 of, I think there was what it says Lord Bradford 29. Yeah, there were 7 original members, and they go back down to that, and then you just see like the way it ends. I love it's like you just hear ting, ting,
I
like
know.
because he's like hammering away, and then you see the crown, and then you see the sword, and then he's within the flames, and this is where we end, and it's the fucking crown with the 3 crows, like you said,
Yeah,
and you see this like I guess it was a troll, right? Yeah, I would say he's a troll, and he's crying
I
as
know.
he's doing it. Oh,
I know.
it's such a great story. I mean, they're all good, but I think so much happens here, and you learn so much
This
about
is my
Hellboy.
favorite.
It is, yeah,
It is my favorite.
yeah, I
Like
could see.
there's so like you said, there's so much great stories, but this is just like my favorite. I don't know how to describe it. It's just it speaks to me to another level. I don't know. I think it's because of all the folklore, the lore ties in together, and like we know everything about his like past and like how he was born and everything. It just answers so many questions, I think.
It's one of the things I love about Hellboy, and it's in this story is that you can always learn something new about
Yeah.
him, and there's always things to uncover because while he was brought here in 1945, right? He was brought to our world. The comic book series starts in the 90s. That's 94 is when Hellboy is first, introduced to the comic book world, right? So
Yeah.
like there's so many years. And even now, like I said, I think he started with a BPR Hellboy and BPRD 1947. He's doing a little mini series, and now they'll do like one shots and stuff like that. And they're only at 1957 because I think he's basically gone year by year since that series started. I think it started about like 9 years ago, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
like there's so much, and he has shown us stories in the 60s that like we've seen that already, but there's so much more to tell, and that's what I love. And that's what even going back and like reading them, knowing what happens now, also adds a different element to going back and
Yeah.
reading them, because like now
Yeah, yeah.
you've also learned some other stuff about his past, so you kind of understand why he would be the way he is in certain situations. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I just love Hellboy so much. To me, it's like if again, like Mignola's my Mount Rushmore of favorite creators, Hellboy is on my Mount Rushmore of favorite characters in all of comic
Yeah,
books.
it's one of the best comic books out there. I think it's just like when every time people ask like, oh, like what books do you recommend? What comic books do you recommend? What are your favorite comic books ever? Hellboy is always in those lists because it's just one of the best comic books out there. Like it's just one of the best character ever written. It's just so good.
Yeah, and it's a book you can recommend to somebody that like yourself that's not really into superheroes,
Exactly.
but then you can also recommend it to people that do like superheroes because in a sense I mean, I wouldn't call him a superhero, but he's a hero, right? So like there is a
Yeah.
little bit of that crossover. There is, like the BPRD members like have powers too, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like there is an element of both, but this kind of stands in its own kind of category. And look, like you've said, like too, like how much stuff has like kind of come from this BPRD Baltimore Witchfinder. Like there's so many other things that are set within this universe that don't even really have anything to do with Hellboy, but they're
Yeah.
all good. And like I mean, it's called the Mignolaverse, right? Like
Exactly.
he has his hand, or his like he's got a part of all of it. Whether he's writing the story or not, he still is involved in everything. Everything goes through him,
Yeah.
to make sure it lines up with his overall vision. And it doesn't seem like he has any signs of stopping. Hellboy's been around for almost 30 years. I
Yeah.
mean, I said 94, right? So next year is going to be the 30th anniversary of Hellboy. Like
Yeah,
that makes me
it's
feel
true.
a little old, but you know, but it's just crazy. And it's like the quality of these books is it's damn near perfect every time, especially like everything Mignola did, like with the main Hellboy volumes. Like
Yeah,
there's not one volume that I could say like I didn't like, or that I was like, all right, it's okay. Like it's all amazing. And
they're all good.
yeah, so I can't say enough good stuff about the character. I mean, like we probably said this too in the other video we did, but I love this story. It's a great story. If you're listening or you're watching this and you haven't read it, or if you've never read Hellboy, I mean, go pick up
Go
this
for
one.
it.
And that's a good thing, is you can start wherever. That's
Exactly.
another thing. Like it may say volume 12, or it may say, omnibus 4, or whatever it may say, like, but it doesn't, nothing needs to be read in order, because he jumps around and he
Yeah.
continues to go. I mean, look, the new stuff that's coming out right now is set 40 years before the story we just read, right? Like that's crazy to me. So yeah, I just love it. I'm excited to do more Hellboy with you. And
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's my favorite series, and it's actually the first comics I've read ever. Like, this is how I got started in comic books. Hellboy is how I got started. So
that's
that's why I
awesome.
like it. It has like a special place in my heart as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, to have Hellboy be your first comic is that's something special. So yeah, we'll definitely be doing more. And then make sure like you stay tuned for more of those, and follow us on social media. Our links are down below, and hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new vid drops. And on that note, we're out.